His fear is silence, which is also what he's been doing. That's how Donald Trump treats the things he's most afraid of, in my observation. And so, judging by his silence, Donald Trump is living in abject terror tonight of the Epstein files. Donald Trump spent the day in silence today about the Epstein files. The man who loves to have the cameras aimed at him while he plays with questions from reporters without ever actually answering them, didn't dare allow reporters to get anywhere near him today at the White House. Donald Trump said nothing on social media today about the Epstein files. Nothing about the person who for 15 years Donald Trump called a terrific guy, while the person Donald Trump thought was a terrific guy was raping children. The last time Donald Trump said anything about his now dead friend Jeffrey Epstein was on Saturday at 9:13 a.m. when he said nothing will be good enough. Donald Trump said, "I have asked the Justice Department to release all grand jury testimony with respect to Jeffrey Epstein, subject only to court approval. With that being said, and even if the court gave its full and unwavering approval, nothing will be good enough for the troublemakers and radical left lunatics making the request. It will always be more and more and more." One of those radical left lunatics, I guess, is Marjorie Taylor Greene, according to Donald Trump's description. She's always been called a radical lunatic, but she is a Republican member of Congress who's always supported Donald Trump and built her short political career on supporting Donald Trump. Today, Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, "If you tell the base of people who support you of deep state treasonous crimes, election interference, blackmail, and rich, powerful, elite, evil cabals, then you must take down every enemy of the people. If not, the base will turn and there's no going back. Dangling bits of red meat no longer satisfies. They want the whole steak dinner and will accept nothing else." Marjorie Taylor Greene is making it very clear what would be good enough for her. She wants the entirety of the Epstein files released, not just the grand jury transcripts, which would be the least informative part of the Trump Justice Department's criminal investigative file on Jeffrey Epstein. While some Trump supporters who were complaining about Donald Trump's refusal to release the Epstein files last week are now going quiet, Marjorie Taylor Greene hasn't given up yet. She said this tonight at 7:06 p.m.
I believe in transparency, and I believe the American people, this is a serious issue. I can tell you for the past, more than a week, the highest volume of calls into my office have been about Epstein. People want the information. They don't want things covered up, especially when it comes to the most well-known convicted pedophile in modern day history. It's important to them, and they really want the information out.
But Donald Trump says Marjorie Taylor Greene is a radical left lunatic, and everyone she claims is calling her Georgia office, all of them, radical left lunatics, and that nothing will be good enough for those Republican radical left lunatics. Donald Trump's silence about Jeffrey Epstein now extends, as it always does, to his complete silence about Jeffrey Epstein's victims. One of them was a high school girl who felt very lucky when she got a job working for Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And that was the worst lucky moment she ever had. Because when she was working in the spa as an assistant at Mar-a-Lago, she met Donald Trump's friend, Ghislaine Maxwell, who then lured her to Jeffrey Epstein's Florida home, where she was raped by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell at the same time, the very first time that she was there. Donald Trump has never spoken a word of sympathy for that girl who used to work for him. Donald Trump has never spoken a word of sympathy for that girl whose life was ruined when Jeffrey Epstein's criminal co-conspirator recruiter walked into Donald Trump's spa that day. Ghislaine Maxwell is serving a 20-year prison sentence right now for, among other things, recruiting that girl, sex trafficking that girl. Donald Trump has twice said in interviews, after Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted as Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirator in sex trafficking, that he wishes her well. Quote, "I just wish her well." Donald Trump has said that repeatedly about her. Donald Trump can't think of a negative thing to say about the woman who is in prison tonight because she lured those girls into Jeffrey Epstein's home, onto Jeffrey Epstein's plane, to Jeffrey Epstein's island. Ghislaine Maxwell did not testify in her own defense at her trial. She did not speak a word. Ghislaine Maxwell is appealing her conviction, as every criminal defendant with money always does, but very few of those appeals ever succeed. But if her appeal does not succeed, her only hope of getting out of prison is a pardon from Donald Trump. And Donald Trump has abused the pardon power beyond the wildest dreams of any other president, and certainly beyond the wildest nightmares of the authors of the constitutional power to pardon granted in absolute terms to the president by those framers of the Constitution, who would be horrified to see that Donald Trump used that power to pardon every single person who participated in an insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th to try to overturn the results of a presidential election for Donald Trump. Ghislaine Maxwell has been absolutely silent about what she knows about Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. Jeffrey Epstein himself, before he killed himself, and before he was in prison, Jeffrey Epstein, in 2017, in a tape-recorded interview, said, "I was Donald's closest friend for 10 years. Surely Jeffrey Epstein discussed Donald Trump with his criminal co-conspirator, but she has never said a word about what she knows about Donald Trump." The Epstein files might have reports from FBI agents who interviewed other people who might have heard Ghislaine Maxwell tell them something about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. That's the kind of thing that could be in the Epstein files. Might not be admissible in court, but it could be in the investigative files. We know that the only person in the world who Donald Trump actually feels protective of is Donald Trump. And so the only person in the world he would be willing to extend himself to protect in the Epstein files would presumably be himself, Donald Trump. Donald Trump's place in the Epstein files might be completely innocent. It's possible. It might simply include press clippings that FBI agents probably have in their files of Donald Trump praising Jeffrey Epstein. The Epstein files surely somewhere there has a copy of the 2002 New York Magazine profile of Jeffrey Epstein, in which Donald Trump says, "I've known Jeff for 15 years, terrific guy, he's a lot of fun to be with. It is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. No doubt about it, Jeffrey enjoys his social life." That's the kind of thing that appears in FBI investigative files. Donald Trump's public dating history does not include underage girls, but truly weirdly and perversely, in 2006, the year Jeffrey Epstein was first charged with sex trafficking, Donald Trump said something very, very strange when he was asked on Howard Stern's radio show about the ages of women.
Do you think you could now be banging 24-year-olds?
Oh, absolutely. I have no trouble.
Would you do it?
I have no problem.
Yeah, do you have an age limit, or would you?
No, I have no age. I mean, I have an age. I don't want to be
The
like
upper bracket, yeah.
only with 12-year-olds.
Donald Trump was 60 years old. 60 years old. No problem with 24-year-olds. He was 60 years old when you just heard him say he would not want to be involved with a 12-year-old. And of course, Donald Trump is the only president of the United States in history who has publicly discussed anything like that. One count in Donald Trump's new lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal, claims specific defamation because the Wall Street Journal article described Donald Trump as being a friend of Jeffrey Epstein. The article also described a birthday letter that bears Donald Trump's name to Jeffrey Epstein on Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday. And the lawsuit that Donald Trump filed the very next day, which he is very unlikely to ever pursue beyond just that filing, because it would force him to testify under oath about Jeffrey Epstein. That lawsuit of Donald Trump's claims that it is defamatory to say that Donald Trump was a friend of Jeffrey Epstein's. That's what that lawsuit said on Friday. And the very next day, Saturday, the New York Times published a massive article under the headline, "Inside the Long Friendship Between Trump and Epstein." That's how absurd the Donald Trump lawsuit is against the Wall Street Journal. Donald Trump is not suing the New York Times for saying he had a long friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. And the Trump lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal says it's defamatory to say that he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. That New York Times headline proves to you how absurd the Trump lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal is, and the Trump lawsuit will go nowhere because Donald Trump will not dare to pursue that lawsuit. Donald Trump will not force himself to go under oath testifying about his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, because that's what the Donald Trump lawsuit would force Donald Trump to do. Rupert Murdoch, who Donald Trump is suing, can force Donald Trump to give a videotape deposition under oath with unlimited questioning about Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, and that's never going to happen. The Trump lawsuit was a one-day stunt, just to try to trick the news media, and it tricked a lot of the news media, and tricked Donald Trump's followers into thinking that Donald Trump was actually taking some kind of action against the Wall Street Journal. Senator Dick Durbin, the top Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee with jurisdiction over the Justice Department, sent a letter to the Justice Department saying, according to information my office received, you pressured the FBI to put approximately 1,000 personnel in its information management division, including the Record Information Dissemination Section, which handles all requests submitted by the public under the Freedom of Information Act and Privacy Act, on 24-hour shifts to review approximately 100,000 Epstein-related records in order to produce more documents that could then be released on an arbitrary short deadline. This effort, which reportedly took place from March 14th through the end of March, was haphazardly supplemented by hundreds of FBI New York field office personnel, many of whom lacked the expertise to identify statutorily protected information regarding child victims and child witnesses, or properly handle FOIA requests. My office was told that these personnel were instructed to flag any records in which President Trump was mentioned. The letter asks Attorney General Pam Bondi several questions, including, have you personally reviewed all files in DOJ's possession related to Jeffrey Epstein? And who made the decision to assign hundreds of New York field office personnel to this March review of Epstein-related records? Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Daniel Goldman of New York. He's a member of the House Judiciary Committee. And Congressman Goldman, as a former federal prosecutor, you've worked with the FBI, you've seen, you know what these investigative files look like. First of all, give us your reaction to hundreds of FBI officers in the New York field office being assigned to these documents, to study these documents.
It's absolutely crazy, Lawrence. It's crazy to assign so many on, as Senator Durbin said, such an arbitrary deadline that was really driven by the MAGA base that was upset that Pam Bondi's first dispatch of the Epstein files was so underwhelming and mostly public information. And in light of that pressure, she and FBI Director Kash Patel essentially took most of the New York field office to look for redactions in the Epstein files. Now, keep in mind, this is the New York field office that does terrorism cases, that does violent gangs cases, that does corruption, that does all sorts of fraud, securities fraud. The list goes on. I worked with them for 10 years. All of these agents were pulled away from keeping the public safe just to look through these Epstein files, flag Donald Trump's name, and somehow, some way, Lawrence, and I wonder how, that arbitrary deadline that they were racing towards because of pressure to release the Epstein files came and went, and now all of a sudden there's nothing of interest to anyone. I wonder how that happened.
So, what is the state of play in the House of Representatives tonight? It appears that there's the possibility that Mike Johnson might just close up the House for the rest of the summer just to avoid a vote on the Epstein files?
That's right. Last week, Republicans on the Rules Committee voiced a lot of displeasure that they continue to have to vote on amendments to release the Epstein files. The Democrats, we are just simply asking for transparency. Donald Trump said this was the most transparent administration in history. We have heard over and over all of these reasons why they need to release the Epstein files, and then Donald Trump does a 180, clearly a cover-up. So we just want to see what's in there, and we continue to introduce amendments to force the Republicans to release them. But the Republicans don't want to have to vote against that because they've been advocating for it for so long. So they have just abandoned their job in the Rules Committee. And without a rule, we cannot vote on any bills on the floor. So it very well may be that we go home later this week without voting on anything because Republicans refuse to release the Epstein files.
As a former federal prosecutor, you know there's plenty of instances in which, in fact most, where you wouldn't want to release any of the investigative file. Anything that was not used in public proceedings, you wouldn't want to release. Do you have any concerns about the precedent that could be set here with a release, or is the presidential involvement something that makes it unique?
Lawrence, I have so many concerns about the Department of Justice. I will say the precedent about releasing investigative files is not high on the list. The precedent of investigating political enemies would go much higher as just one example. But the reason why you don't ordinarily release investigative files is that they're often include uncharged co-conspirators and who don't have an opportunity to defend themselves if they were not indicted. In this particular case, there was no interest in the Epstein files from anyone other than the MAGA right, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, leading the way with all these conspiracy theories that Donald Trump himself revved up. The idea that the Department of Justice was hiding some elite cabal, as Marjorie Taylor Greene says, of the wealthy and connected who were involved with Jeffrey Epstein. So they brought this on themselves to release them. And now those wealthy elites who are trying to be protected by the Department of Justice and the Trump administration appears to be Donald Trump himself. So now he has given direct orders, it appears, to Pam Bondi not to release the critical files. And let's be clear, grand jury testimony is almost certainly going to be irrelevant to other people involved, including potentially Donald Trump. You would find that information in a lot of the other investigative files, not in the grand jury testimony that relates to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Carson Day Goldman, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.